What's new from Apple? There's the new iPhone 16 Pro, built for Apple Intelligence. And it comes with the all-new camera control, giving you an easier way to quickly access your camera tools. The new Apple Watch Series 10 has our biggest display and our thinnest design ever. And this? It's the sound of active noise cancellation, now available on one of 2 new AirPods 4 models. So quiet. Check out all of the new products and new features at apple.com. You can even buy yourself something new. See apple.com for product availability updates. Apple Intelligence coming this fall.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
At BlueNile.com, you can find endless ways to make your moments sparkle. From classic and timeless jewelry gifts to creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams. All at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. And right now, you can save up to 40% on fine jewelry and 25% on engagement ring settings during the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale, going on now. Go to BlueNile.com to shop the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale and save up to 40%. That's BlueNile.com.
Hello there. If you're a Forest fan listening to this on Monday morning, I bet you've had a good weekend, haven't you? This is the 1865 Match Report, and I'm Rich Ferraro. And this is the Monday morning after Forest have beaten Liverpool at Anfield. Yes, Forest have beaten Liverpool at Anfield for the first time since 1969. That's 55 years. And that's from way before I was born, and certainly also, George Edwards, from way, way, way before you were born. How did it feel when you came back from that match thinking, I've just witnessed something historic for Reds fans?
Yeah, there was a lot of disbelief there, I think, because coming away to Liverpool, I think I even looked at the odds before the match and was thinking, should I put a bet on Forest to win? And it was about 10-1, and I thought, nah, we're not going to do it. Nobody, I think, ever thought that was possible, even getting a point. Even though we've started the season well, you just looked at how Liverpool have started the season. It looks like they've just carried straight on from when Klopp left with Arne Slot. And we obviously thought about the 2 matches we've had there already. 3-2 obviously was a bit closer than the 3-0 last season, but we didn't really merit getting anything from either game. And then, yeah, it was just completely unbelievable. It was the perfect performance from a team going away to Anfield, because we're not going to be able to go there and be Man City or Arsenal and take Liverpool on at their own game. So we've got to adapt. And I think Nuno has to take so much credit for that, because he gave us a platform with the first half performance with the selection. And then he thought, you know what, rather than when under Cooper, I think if we were a 0-0 at 60 minutes, he'd be like, yeah, let's take a point. Let's throw defenders on and stuff. Actually, let's put the opposition out. Let's put the game out. This is a game that we can win, that's there for the taking. Let's make some attacking substitutions. And yeah, it was the perfect performance. I think beating a team like Liverpool, away at Liverpool, you have to have loads of things go in your favour. Obviously, I think every player was an 8 out of 10. And we read a look at times, but we also showed so much quality at times, defensively so organised. And going forward, 5 shots all in the second half, it's about taking your chances and taking one of those moments when they're presented to you. And obviously, Callum Hudson-Odoi, in true Callum Hudson-Odoi style, did exactly that. And I put on my Instagram story after the match, and I think I was very correct. It's the least Nottingham Forest thing that I can remember Forest doing in a very long time.
Yeah, that's a very nice way of putting it. So let's start off. We'll talk about tactics and some of the events in the match, but I think most of us were expecting the Forest team to be relatively unchanged following the good run of results and the unbeaten start to the season. So Nuno sprung a few surprises. So although I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're probably aware of what the team was, but we had Sells in goal. We had a shuffle at fullback because Ola Aina moved to right back, with Alex Moreno making his first league start at left back, and Milenkovic and Murillo, the 2 M's, in the centre back positions. But in midfield, we saw quite a lot of shifting about. Ryan Yates was in. It turns out that Ibrahim Sangare is injured on international duty. And the initial prognosis, if you believe reports, is not great. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So Ryan Yates was accompanied by another player making his first league start, James Ward-Prowse, in the centre of the park. On the wings, no Alanga, no Hudson-Odoi. We had Nico Dominguez on one side and Elliot Anderson on the other, and Morgan Gibbs-White playing behind Chris Wood. Now, George, I have to say, when I first heard that team news, I was not particularly impressed. What were you thinking? And also, what was the mood of the Forest fans, mingling around the concourse in Anfield when you heard the team news going, oh God, what's going on here?
Yeah, well, I was stood out. Is it the Arkle, the pub that's just off the corner where the coaches are parked up and the lineup came through? And yeah, there was a big sense of why, because especially Nuno seems like a guy who doesn't like to change much. We've seen him in the first 3 games. He made one change that was enforced with Danilo getting injured for Anderson. And apart from that, the lineup, the setup and the style has all been exactly the same. And I wasn't sure whether he would. I thought, he'd probably make a couple of changes, but I thought the style and the outlook would be very similar to what we've seen because it's worked. And like I mentioned in the sort of intro, I think Forest's downfall has in these games been playing the opposition, going to a back five, absorbing pressure and sort of accepting defeat before the game's even started. And I was a bit, thinking Forest done that, playing sort of 5 midfield players. And I was thinking this obsession with Dominguez on the wing once again, showing its head. Looks like Anderson maybe on the other wing, or we've got 2 ready wingers on the bench ready to play. But I think Nuno in the selection and in the tactics that we'll get onto really showed that he's been there before in these games. He's taken points off some of the biggest teams in English football at Wolves. It was, a really good team selection. But before the game, certainly, and in the concourse, in the pub, there was a lot of negativity and sort of questioning the manager. And I think there has been a lot of questioning the manager in certain instances, but I think at the minute, the positivity towards him is possibly the best it's ever been since he's came through the door.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, at the risk of spoiler alert, Nuno was proven right, wasn't he? So it saw a slight change in formation with Forest playing a much flatter 4 in midfield. So Dominguez and Anderson were essentially playing as wide midfielders rather than as wingers. And then, as I say, Morgan was playing kind of still in the number 10 role, but rather than having the wingers flanking him, he was slightly ahead of them, kind of accompanying Chris Wood. And it has to be said that Liverpool will come away from that first half in particular thinking, well, we had most of the play. They certainly had all of the chances because the only shot on goal that Forest had was when Morgan Gibbs-White got through on goal, shot wide, and it was offside anyway. So technically, Forest had no shots, and Liverpool did. But I also have to say that the only moments of jeopardy from my seat were that the ones that Forest created. So there's the mistake that Ryan Yates made, easy for me to say, where he tried to shepherd the ball out and Luis Diaz, robbed him and hit the post. And then there's also the heebie-jeebies that were given to us by Matt Sells when he had an easy gather and then failed to gather it. He was lucky in the sense that when it bounced behind him, it hit him and went the right way.
Yeah.
But although Liverpool did have other chances, most notably the one that Jota had, where he kind of hit it straight to Sells when really he probably should have headed it. Really, there was I didn't feel any massive set of nerves other than those ones where we made the mistakes. It seemed like Forest, they weren't in control, but they had Liverpool at arm's length for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. And it's those self-inflicted mistakes that often are the catalyst for things that go wrong. I think Arne Slot said after the game that Liverpool made sort of 3 or 4 really good chances. I would like to wonder where he saw them from because they didn't create, like we mentioned, they only created one decent chance. Great ball in from McAllister. Jota should have done far better with that. And in the end, it was a relatively comfortable save from Sells. But even that chance, you saw how close Murillo and Moreno were to him. There's not that much we could have done. He couldn't have taken a touch. He didn't have the time to do that. He had to rush the shot because of how little space he had, and that showed the brilliant organisation that Forest had. And then the other 2, obviously Yates being too casual, Sells, unfortunately doing what Forest goalkeepers have done over the years, and luckily it didn't go against him. I think when things like that go in your favour, you do get a sense of, is this Forest's day? Because, like I mentioned, things have to go in your favour. And when things like that happen, you do question whether it is going to be a day. The formation, the setup was really good, though, because although Liverpool had a lot of the ball and they're always going to in these games, Forest having the sort of 5 midfield players allowed them, when they won the ball, obviously they win the ball in very congested areas, but because they had a lot of players closer together, they'd win the ball back, they'd make 3 or 4 quick passes, and then they'd have the ball at their feet. Yes, along the back four, there was a lot of sort of sideward, backwards passes, but it meant that Forest could have a minute and 90-second spell on the ball, which allowed Liverpool not to create any pressure. There wasn't I think there was between 30 and 40 minutes, they had a really good spell on the ball, and that's when that chance came. But apart from that, they didn't have the ability to create momentum, to create that sort of fear factor for Forest, because Forest wouldn't let them have the ball, particularly close to their box, that often, because the midfield, the press was so good. They were forced out wide. And when Forest won the ball back, they were reasonably good at keeping it until Liverpool pressed them. And then they thought, right, let's go long, or kick it out of play or something and let them start again. Chris Wood, I think, also has to be given a mention. I mean, Konate and Van Dijk, brilliant on the ball, but they are 2 monsters. But he did so well, I think, in the air. He won quite a few headers and didn't let them have any easy headers. So, yeah, it was a really good, solid first half performance. Forest, as we mentioned, didn't make any chances, but it was a really good platform and foothold that they got into the match. And then, obviously, in the second half, they built on that platform and got the win.
Yeah. So just before we shift into the second half mode, I do want to mention, and they have to be mentioned, the 2 fullbacks, because Moreno and particularly Aina were absolutely outstanding, weren't they? Moreno, let's be honest, he wasn't 100%, but then neither was Salah. And the fact that Salah didn't really get a shot. Salah did have a shot in the second half, but it was easy one to deal with. But bearing in mind that Luis Diaz has been in really good form at the start of the season, he is a danger man. Probably Liverpool's main danger man so far this season. Didn't get a sniff. Aina was not only brilliant in the one-on-one situations, but also when he came out of those, he's incredibly composed on the ball in terms of either running it out away from the defence or passing it to somebody who had a chance to help Forest clear their lines and get the ball out of danger themselves. Massive composure from Aina. And when you think about it, pundits talk about the amount of money that Forest have spent, but what we found on the basis of the weekend match is that 2 of the big names were a player who cost nothing and a player who cost £3 million.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've mentioned Aina there really well. I want to focus on Moreno because for me, I think he was our best player. Obviously, I think because Salah has been Liverpool's biggest threat, he always seems to score. Him and Jota always seem to score against us, especially at Anfield. And Salah just did not get a sniff. He could not get past Moreno. Moreno had better pace than him. He was stronger. He was more confident. And there was one time where Moreno was out of position and Salah was played through. But who's there? It's Murillo. And he steps across, glides past Salah like he's not there and puts it into the upper tier of the Kenny Dalglish stand and Forest reset. It was a brilliant, disciplined, defensive performance. And it shows, I think, why in these games, often managers like to play a back 5. But I think packing the midfield is so vital for that because very rarely do teams now sort of go out wide, often constantly to create their chances. It's so often through the middle. But yeah, Aina as well was fantastic. I think obviously a big part of his game is his pace and his ability to come out with the ball and drive forward. But because that wasn't something Forrest was trying to do in the first half, all of his belief, all of his sort of drive was on the defence, was on keeping Diaz quiet. And I mean, we forget that for large parts of last season and especially this season, he's been on the left, but he adapted to being on the right so quickly, like he'd been playing there for so long. And Moreno really showed why. I think Forest were in for him in January, weren't they? And they went to Villa, but they've pursued him. You know, they've not taken sort of embarrassed by the fact that Moreno chose Villa over them and didn't go in for him again. The opportunity came around to get him. And yeah, it was harsh, you know, dropping Nico Williams on the face of it. A really good start to the season, but those two were utterly fantastic and yeah, really showed it's a really positive partnership that they could hopefully build.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those, isn't it, whereby we've seen Nico Williams grow into being a Premier League fullback. He was far from the finished article when we paid a lot of money to sign him, but you can see the know-how and experience that Aina and Moreno have from not just playing in the Premier League, but having played overseas as well. They really kind of were able to marshal their wingers well and really kept control of the players that they were
Yeah,
marking. And it was outstanding, and we'll talk about the rest of the defense in a bit. Now it's worth pointing out that um, in the second half it was more honours even in many ways, but really the turning point I think will be around about the hour mark because there's a little flurry of substitutions, wasn't there? And Forest made a couple of substitutions when they brought on Hudson-Odoi for Nico Dominguez on 54 minutes. And initially, Callum played on the right-hand side as a straight swap. And then on 61 minutes, Anderson came off for Alanga, which meant that we saw the more customary thing of Alanga on the right and Hudson-Odoi on the left. But then also on the hour mark, Liverpool made a triple sub, and if Forest's substitutions saw them trying to exploit any weaknesses in Liverpool's formation and tactics, well, Liverpool's formation made those holes even. Liverpool substitutions rather made those holes even bigger. I think that the substitutions they made, which was Bradley for McAllister, Gakpo for Diaz, and Darwin Nunez for Diogo Jota, I think they made Liverpool weaker.
yeah.
And in particular, putting Bradley on at right back and moving Alexander-Arnold into midfield. I mean, England fans will be going, Alexander-Arnold in midfield, nice concept, doesn't really work. And it didn't. And poor Conor Bradley up against Callum Hudson-Odoi, it was man against boy, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it was a mismatch. Before we come on to the subs and stuff, a word you mentioned towards the end of the first half was control, and I think Forest had exactly the game where they wanted it to be. They are never going to be completely in control away at Anfield, but they had Liverpool exactly where they wanted them, in front of them, and really knew how to take on the game. And then obviously the plan in the second half was, I think, to play like that to stifle them again for another 10 minutes because in that 3-2 game a couple of years ago. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 0-0 at half time. And then 2 minutes into the second half, Liverpool took the lead. And all that hard work that we've done in the first half was gone. So, Forest, the plan was just to carry that on to not let Liverpool get straight into a rhythm and then slowly feed in these players that can change the game in our favour. And it worked really well because Elanga came on and Robertson got booked literally 20 seconds after. You can see they're both, because Robertson particularly bombs forward down that left side, he's already going to be tired from the work he's put himself through. And then Elanga comes on, one of the fastest players in the Premier League, fresh, and Robertson couldn't handle him. Obviously got that yellow card, and then he can't make a challenge on him again and get risk being sent off. So, yeah, Nuno really played those substitutions well. I think the desperation was shown by Liverpool. And, I mean, to be honest, it was clear Mo Salah wasn't having the best game. I think he should have been taken off. I think football is a game where individuals can't be prioritised over the team. And yes, Mo Salah, just needs a moment. He needs one bit of space, one bit of time to make something special happen. But it was clear nothing was going his way. And to take off someone like Jota, maybe, who's played so well this season, I think was a bit harsh because Salah wasn't getting any joy. And I think that's where Nuno really excelled because he put the team ahead of individual players. And I don't think Arne Slot quite did that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, Salah had the one chance where he kind of got in down the right-hand channel and he had a shot with his right foot towards the near post, which was meat and drink really for Matt Sells. It wasn't a difficult one at all. Having made the substitution, then Forest, actually, Anthony Elanga was the first player to have a decent effort towards the goal. It was good play between Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White. Chris Wood was supporting as well, and the ball went to Elanga in the right-hand channel. And after all the composure from Hudson-Odoi and Gibbs-White, Anthony Elanga's composure completely missed him. He ended up ballooning it over the crossbar. But it's worth pointing out that the goal, when it came, started on the edge of Forest's box. And it was Darwin Nunez trying to receive the ball in an attacking position, Nikola Milenkovic, and we've already said about how impressive he's looked in his first 2 or 3 games in a Forest shirt, and once again he was magnificent. And what was brilliant about this is that rather than jumping in to try and get the ball, he just stood up and Nunez had nowhere to go. And it meant that Milenkovic was in control, able to step away, pass the ball forward to Gibbs-White out to Elanga. Elanga's run really put Liverpool on the back foot. And the pass from Elanga across the pitch, curving behind the line of the Liverpool defenders to kind of find Hudson-Odoi on the other wing was absolutely magnificent. And you mentioned Hudson-Odoi, and he's basically, I guess, and there's a Chelsea link here, I suppose. He's basically the Arjen Robben of the left wing, in that you know what he's going to do. He can only do one thing really well, but he seems to be absolutely unstoppable because he turned his fullback inside out. He absolutely wrong-footed the man on the inside. And then the shot, it wasn't just a case of him wellying it. It was precision. He really placed that perfectly. He knew exactly where he wanted it to go, and is another one of his postage stamp finishes.
Oh wow, yeah, he's just magnificent, and I think he scored 9 goals for Forest so far. That surely is up there with the best because of the occasion, scoring at Anfield, because of the goalkeeper. I mean, Alisson, I don't think he had his best game, but he still just looks massive. You're a player when you see him in front of you, and I bet you don't know where on earth to go, especially from that angle. And from, like you say, people know exactly what Cal's going to do. And the precision to get it off the post in the corner, you couldn't get it further in the corner. It's just a magnificent goal. And it's a goal that sums up what Forest are under Nuno. And I remember that Southampton game, we were against a very similar opposition, obviously not in terms of quality, but in terms of how they approached the game. Southampton were passing it around pretty aimlessly, to be fair. And there was a stat about sort of Southampton's passes per shot. Forest passes per shot, there were about 14. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was any different, because Forest, once they'd make those changes, once they'd put Elanga, Hudson-Odoi on and reverted back to their sort of normal conventional style, it was just like clockwork. It was get it forward, move into space, drive into it and execute. And that pass from Elanga, if Kevin De Bruyne did that, they'd be raving about it for weeks. It was quite clear, I think, when Elanga got the ball, especially from where the Forest fans were behind the goal, that that's what he needed to do. But Anthony Elanga, that doesn't come naturally to him. Normally, I wouldn't have been surprised if he sort of put his head down and drove wide and then tried to get it in low and hope Chris Wood was in the middle, which he wasn't. But to have the awareness to dribble sort of straight past, I think it's Robertson going back into it, might not be. And then to get his head up and see amongst 3 Liverpool players tracking back, Hudson-Odoi free at the far post. It's a perfect pass, brilliant finish. And then, there was just a moment when the ball hit the back of the net. I mean, I couldn't actually see it because the Liverpool way is pretty woeful. I was right in the corner, past the corner flag. I couldn't see the goal. But there was almost like a pause for about half a second. Wow, we have just scored. We have the lead at Anfield. And then obviously there was the raucous celebration. It was an incredible moment. And I took a picture of the scoreboard with my phone because I thought, is this going to last? But Forest beating Liverpool away. It was a magnificent moment, and it's a moment that generations of Forest fans have been waiting for. You mentioned at the start about how long it's been, and I saw Ellie and Ellie's dad in the concourse after Ellie, who's on the podcast, and he's been going to Forest for 35, 40 years, never got a glimpse of a moment like this. It was just magical, and it's a once in a generational moment game, and it was just so special to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I think that thing that you mentioned, and you mentioned it in. Obviously, you write for the Famous Club website, our friends of the podcast, and in your match report there, you mentioned that whole thing of there is something quite special, particularly in away matches, where you get that kind of second of disbelieving silence. Is it going in? Is it going in? Oh crap! It's gone in, and then the explosion of joy. And you know what, as well. I think it's worth, just to skip forward a minute, it's worth mentioning that there was a later chance as well where Elanga was put through. There were some substitutions from Forest, and these were the ones which were kind of to I suppose, to cement the victory. So Wood came off for Jota Silva, and we saw Morato come on for Morgan and Nico come on for Alex Moreno. So Forest did go with an extra defender, and they moved Elanga to centre forward with Jota playing on the right-hand side. And Jota, despite not being that big a guy, he got a really good flick on, and Elanga got through. And this time he kind of did better. He forced the save from Alisson. So Forest could have gone 2 up. But to me, that cemented the idea that, to be honest, as soon as Forest scored that goal and had that moment of, is it going in? It's gone in. Let's celebrate. I never felt any jeopardy. I never felt any nerves from that moment. I actually felt as confident as it's possible to feel that actually we had the result in the bag.
Yeah, I think I was the opposite in terms of how I was feeling, because I know I've been here before and I felt sick, to be honest, because I was thinking how close we are to this moment. Wouldn't we?
I felt sick as well. But...
yeah. To sort of concede 2 late goals and it all be the other way. But no, if you were watching as a neutral, I think you wouldn't think Liverpool would have a chance. I mean, it was only Forest creating chances. We had another chance that Chris Wood had. I think he got flagged offside, and I haven't seen it back because it's not on any of the highlights or anything that Alisson saved. But A, I'm not too sure if he was offside. I thought it was pretty close. And B, if that goes in, VAR check it and it could stand. So that was another chance Forest had. And yeah, it was only them getting forward. It was only them with the belief that they could actually pounce on a goal. And Liverpool just looked pretty desperate, throwing players on. I think in the end, Van Dijk was playing centre-back on his own. And to be fair, because of how Forest was setting up, sort of more defensive-minded at that point, and because of how good a player he is, he sort of could do that. And the substitutions from Nuno, once again, I wasn't too sure about them, because I was thinking Moreno was doing such a good job against Salah. Yes, he might have been tiring, but because Forest were dropping back so much now, he's not really got to do that much running. He's just got to keep Salah in his pocket like he had been doing. And I wasn't sure whether, putting Nico on and changing that, would that disrupt the flow? I thought Morato had to come on just to sort of add a bit more defensive solidity. And then, I thought, why is Jota coming on? Because something Forest did so well was get it clear and then maybe keep the ball further up the pitch, and Wood winning the flick on and somebody keeping hold of the ball. But Jota did exactly that. What a brilliant attitude he was. He's just a grafter, isn't he? And it summed up Forest yesterday. They gave everything. They left everything on the pitch. And in the end, I think the football scores very rarely lie. I think Forest deserved completely the 3 points, and Liverpool fans can't handle it. I mean, Alisson came out and said something about the better team lost or something like that. But football is a simple game. It's been made very complicated by Guardiola and people like that. But sit the ball in the back of the net, and Forest were better at doing that on the day, and they got what they deserved.
And that was epitomised by Liverpool's late chance where Szoboszlai cut inside. He had a shot, but the amount of bodies in the way, and it was Murillo who's I think it hit the inside of his thigh, went wide. I suspect Sells might have had it anyway, but there was also 2 or 3 defenders back as well. So it would have taken something pretty special for Liverpool to get through that. And as you say, let's be honest, on this occasion the score did not lie, and it finished 1-0 to Forest.
The 1865 Match Report.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. People always say it's good to unwind, but that's easier said than done. The exception, Chumba Casino. They actually make it easier done than said, or at least the same. Chumba Casino is an online social casino with hundreds of casino-style games like slots and blackjack. Play for fun. Play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sign up now and collect your free welcome bonus at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to 1865. It's a very happy match report after a wonderful 1-0 victory away at Liverpool. And George, I'll come back to you in just a second, but I think it's worth saying once again that this was a victory that was thoroughly deserved. And our friend Neil from the Anfield Wrap, he very graciously gave us his view from the home end just after the final whistle.
So queuing up, waiting for a pint after that, Rich. Atrocious from a Liverpool point of view, but I thought Forest were great. I thought they had a really clear plan, really robust midfield. The 4-5-1 worked really, really nicely. And then introducing the pace from the bench and turning it into a little bit of almost like a basketball match. And then I think from 75 onwards, they managed the game brilliantly, saw the way out and went from there. I thought, everyone accredited themselves. New centre-half looks great. Obviously, everyone knows Murillo's a player in there as well. I thought Aina does really, really well. I don't think Salah was actually that well defended. I just think Salah was absolutely awful. I think it's one of his worst ever performances for Liverpool. So I didn't think Moreno did a particularly good job on him in the way I think Aina did on Diaz. I just think that Salah was really, really poor over the course of the game. And then, through the middle of the pitch, thought there was some good performance in there. Thought Gibbs-White did well. Chris Wood just continually asked questions. But ultimately, it was those lads who were brought off the bench who made the difference. And yeah, I think, on the whole, Forest most definitely deserved the points. Liverpool deserve absolutely nothing from the game. Forest deserve all 3 points, and we go on from there. So Forest also, unbeaten at this stage. Nuno tends to start seasons well, and the one sole positive I can take from the game is there's no way Forest finished beneath Everton.
The 1865 Match Report.
And big thanks to Neil. And you can find Anfield Wrap on the Sports Social Network, where you can also find us. And they don't just talk about Liverpool all the time. They have several shows a week. And once in a while, you'll even hear me on there. So, George, just obviously other opinions are available. And Neil is a very balanced fan. The main thing that where I beg to differ slightly was, I think because Salah didn't have his best game, he downplayed Moreno's contribution, yeah. I think. And you've already said about how impressed you were with Moreno. I think it's also worth pointing out that when they made the late substitutions, and Forest were absolutely in control, weren't they, at that point? That we saw Nico Williams actually playing on the left-hand side with Morato playing as the left-sided centre-half. And so we had the 3 M's in the centre-back positions, Milenkovic, Murillo, Morato. And even though we put on the extra defender, it didn't feel like we were doing the kind of the desperate low block, just let's go all out defend. It felt like there was a degree of control and thought into the way that they did that. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Firstly, it's nice to have a balanced Liverpool view and not anyone throwing toys out the pram like a lot of them have been doing. I think Forest do deserve so much credit for the performance, because a team like Liverpool can have a bad day, but even on bad days, teams of that quality still have the ability to win games in the Premier League. It's down to the opposition to be at the top of their game and to make them pay for not being at their best. I think definitely, Salah didn't have the greatest game. I'm not denying that. But Alex Moreno did fantastically, because players like Salah, like I mentioned, they need one moment, they need one bit of space to take the chance. But there was just no getting past Moreno on that day. On the other side,
form is temporary, class is permanent, and Salah is one of the greatest forwards that's ever been seen in the Premier League. So you still have to do your job, don't you?
No, exactly, and everybody on the Forest pitch, on the Forest coaching staff, did their job so well yesterday. It was magnificent, and it shows how far we've came. I was looking back at where Forest were at I was thinking, where at full time we were 4th. We were in the Champions League places. I looked back, and it's actually today that 3 years ago we were bottom of the Championship, having just lost 2-0 to Middlesbrough on that Wednesday night, and it felt like, a changing of the times. It felt like no matter who came in, Forest were destined for League One, and this result feels like a changing of the times, because we've got 4 away wins in a row, but we've came away to Anfield and controlled Liverpool throughout the whole game. We've had them exactly where we want them for 90 minutes, and they've not really had a sniff, especially second half. Apart from that Szoboszlai block, I can't think of a chance that I was threatened by. I think, like you mentioned, the back 5 that turned into in the midfield partnership that we had, it didn't force us back. Obviously, where Forest were in the game, Liverpool are going to have more of the ball and drive forward and try and win the game. But Forest weren't fazed by that. Forest just accepted that was going to be the case, got on with their jobs. I think we've mentioned Nikola Milenkovic so much, but to have a player like him at his prime, it looks like, captain in his country now, really looks like he's been in the Premier League for years. He was so fantastic, and him and Murillo are just pulling in a brilliant partnership. Morato looks like a really solid pair of hands to have as backup, and maybe if we lose Murillo, he's sort of the understudy that's going to come in and take his place. So yeah, everything was just so perfect about yesterday. I think someone we haven't actually mentioned, or a couple of players we haven't mentioned, was Ward-Prowse on his debut. He's been sort of labelled a set-piece merchant, hasn't he? And didn't really got cast away at the West Ham side. But he wasn't just that yesterday. It was fantastic. He got rid of the ball well, quickly. I think his defensive positioning was brilliant in front of the back four. And then Ryan Yates, wow. What a man to have leading your football club, Ryan Yates. He rattles people, he wins free kicks, he wins fouls. And he was just magnificent. That midfield was magnificent. And I can't speak highly of anyone in that red shirt or blue shirt yesterday. It was just, everything was perfect.
We'll come back to Ward-Prowse in just a second, but yeah, Yatesy. And as you said, I mean, you also mentioned about a little bit of saltiness from both Alisson and from some Liverpool fans. I tell you what, the Liverpool fans were massively rattled by Yatesy. And you know what? If they think that Ryan Yates was being overly physical against McAllister, they've not seen anything, because he wasn't. We've seen Yates really be on the edge in loads and loads of matches, and he did get a booking at the end of the first half, which was for time wasting. And so you'd have thought, oh well, that might change things, but no, he was playing really within himself. I thought really controlled. And what was brilliant is that with Ward-Prowse, actually they made really good foils for each other. Ward-Prowse, I think, people mistakenly think, because he's got this set piece ability, that he's going to be some kind of Beckham type player. His set piece taking is very Beckham-esque, but the way he plays, he's not this kind of all action creative number 8. He is a bit more of a controlled player, and that really, really showed. So actually, with the 4-2-3-1 that we mostly play, Ward-Prowse could be a good fit. And bearing in mind, as we've heard, Sangare's out for a bit. Obviously, we're missing Danilo for a while. There's every chance that actually that partnership could do a really, really good job there. So yeah, Arne Slot blamed his players. Alisson said the best team lost. Liverpool fans were going crazy. Naturally, most of the media were concentrating on Liverpool's deficiencies. So this is where I say thank you to Alan Shearer, who, to me, pundit who I like, because he says it as he sees it. And Forest were magnificent, and he said that all the way through. And crucially, I think if we think about Nuno's post-match interview, he made the point that, yes, it was a big win for the fans and it's a big win for the players, and the players were going crazy in the dressing room. You could hear the dressing room in the post-match interviews. And we had interviews with Woody, we had interviews with Alanga and Hudson-Odoi. But Nuno made the point that, it was about the game plan and the players working hard. And it seemed like something which only comes when you have that togetherness and belief and unity. So in that sense, it wasn't a fluke, was it, George?
No, definitely not. I think belief is the word that I took so much heart from and belief in after the game, because, excuse me, that was such a factor, the belief and the togetherness of Forest getting from that position at the bottom of the Championship to the Premier League and staying there. And it's a feeling that last season, towards the end of Cooper and then Nuno coming in, the belief evaporated. I think a lot of people resigned us to getting relegated last season with the points deduction. And given the fact the teams were so poor, I think that's a reason why we stayed up. But that belief and sort of togetherness has really came back now with the away performances that we've put in, the home performances that we've gathered, the points we've got on the board, and just the style of play. Because there was no, Forest did change how they played yesterday, but they still were able to be themselves. They still were able to express themselves in the counter-attacking way that Nuno likes us to do. And yeah, they had control, and I think everyone in that away end had belief that Forest would hold out for those 3 points. Obviously, there was the nerves and everything that comes with watching Forest away from home. But yeah, belief is the word that I've really taken heart from, and who knows where we can go this season, because when the relationship is got right between the Forest players, the fans and the manager, we've seen with Cooper and where we got to that we can do incredible things. And it looks like that's just getting back. You know, I think Nuno in the summer, there was sort of a 50-60% approval rating with the Forest fans. There was a lot of people still against him, but surely that's rocketed up. I think he said how he needed a pre-season with the players, and he was saying that the whole of last season. And look at where he's taken us. Look at what that pre-season has done. He's got everybody buying into what he's telling them, and he's got everybody believing. And who knows where we can go, because, you know, it's easy to overreact especially when you beat Liverpool and it's so unexpected, and they've only lost, that's the second game they've lost since the start of last season at home in the Premier League. So it's easy to get carried away, and I think we are getting carried away, to be fair. But I think there is real food for thought and belief that this isn't a one-off, this isn't an anomaly, and that we can do special things. And we've already got, I mean, this is with the points deduction as well, but we've already got a quarter of the points that we got last season after 4 games. That shows real progress, and we're certainly heading in the right direction.
Well, unlike you, I don't really pay much attention to the league table at this point in the season. But going back to what Nuno said, he pointed out that, you know, at halftime, we tried to correct some of the mistakes we saw, and it meant we were much more compact in the second half. He's making the point that, you know, everything was done deliberately. You know, Forest, yeah, Liverpool had 3 or 4, maybe I think it's 5 shots on goal in the first half, and in the second half they barely had anything. He made the point that the subs came in and impacted the game, and Callum Hudson-Odoi said, yeah, when I was left out, I didn't mind because I knew that I'd get my chance to come on and make an impact. So there's something there. And you mentioned about Coops, and, you know, I think we all loved him. But part of that was down to charisma and personality.
Yeah.
He doesn't rely on that. He's a quiet chap, isn't he? But he's made the point of, like, I'm gonna get on with it. I'm gonna have my pre-season. The signings, the transfer market activity has been much more controlled. And so there's lots and lots of positives. And I'm just going to finish off by coming back to a point that you've made in some of your match reports previously, which is that, 3 years ago, we were bottom of the Championship. But then also you compare it to 2 years ago and to 1 year ago, and you look at this Forest squad, not just the team, the bench, but also the other players around. And it's an absolute quantum leap from where it was even a year ago, never mind 2 years ago, never mind bottom of the Championship 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's a result that just shows that everything about the club is going in the right direction, because you mentioned about Cooper, and we'll love him forever, but I don't think that result is possible under him. I really don't think that we do that, because I think Nuno just had a plan and knew exactly what he was doing. And it wasn't, you know, going defensive to try and grind out a point. It was, no, we'll get a foothold, we'll get to 56 minutes, we'll make the changes, we'll slowly feed in our style, and then bang. And I just don't think there'd have been that bang under Cooper. And yeah, the recruitment, I mean, Nuno had exactly what he wanted. You know, he wanted some grafters to come off the bench. He wanted an extra fullback to come and help the defence. And whatever I think he needs and sees that Forest need, he's got. You know, if we get a sort of, well, we're getting loads of set pieces, we've got James Ward-Prowse, we've got loads of different profiles of players. Morata maybe is a bit taller than Murillo if we need some extra height to come off the bench. You know, the only place we look light is up front. But then we ended the game with no striker, and you couldn't really tell. So it's just a moment where we stop and realise, actually, everything about the club seems to be going in the right direction. You know, it seems like the ownership have realised, and it's all gone quiet now, but they've realised maybe the City Ground is the place to stay. And it just seems like everything is where it's meant to be. And, you know, it could all change overnight if we have, you know, a rough patch of form. But at the minute, everything about Nottingham Forest is rosy, and I just love it.
Yeah, and on that very optimistic and sunny note, we will leave it there for today. So thank you very much to you, George. Thank you also to Neil from the Anfield Wrap. And thank you to you, listener, for joining us. And we will be back with the Women's Football Show in a couple of days' time. And then we will have the Friday 5 News Roundup at the end of the week before we go to Brighton for next weekend's game. So until then, enjoy your week, and come on, you Reds.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.